Get my 6. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the most awesomest homesteading channel on the planet that has really nothing to do with homesteading. Homesteading off the grid. And no, I didn't get a haircut for any haters. It's just in a ponytail. Going to get a haircut soon. I'll tell you all about that when that happens, though. Great news, big announcement. True Hauntings Volume 5 has been completely fully edited and submitted to the publisher at Amazon. And as of this recording, should be available in Kindle ebook within 12 hours and print within 48 hours. Takes it a little bit longer for that, but that will all be on Amazon, and I'll make sure to announce that. We had a last minute contribution that I'm going to share with you here this evening. We're going to read a story. Yeah, so anyway, I'll get to it. I'm trying to do this in order because I have another announcement, but so this one, I'm not going to read the entire personalized part of the email that came to me for this story, but it's from my old Army National Guard recruiter, Bradley C. And hey, what's up, Sergeant C? I think Sergeant C was an E6 last time I knew him. So Staff Sergeant C, he's retired now. Don't know how far he went up the ranks, but good guy. But listen, Sergeant C, I'm gonna make a confession because I know we ran into each other several years back. That was a loud, thunderous tree knock, clearly heard in the forest back here, where potentially Bigfoot Sasquatch may or may not live in the woods behind my house. That's what get my 6 means. Sergeant C knows that, or Sergeant C, because he was in the military, Navy for 8 years, full time. We got company, so folks keep watching. All right, so I ran into Sergeant C less than a year after I'd been back from the Philippines. I think 6 months, and Sergeant C, I know you gave me your number. He said, let's get together, etc., etc. I will admit that I had a resentment towards you because while I was going through all the suck in Iraq, we had an a-hole lieutenant who would always say, don't thank me, thank your recruiter. That's commonly heard, or you think of that being said in basic training. You know, the drill sergeants say that. Our drill sergeants never said that nonsense because they were too busy gearing us up for war because they knew once we finished, we were going to deploy. Because I enlisted during a time of war, and that's why I enlisted. We'd been attacked. But they never said it because but this little a-hole lieutenant in Iraq said it all the time. He would abuse us. He would deny us meals, get us to where we couldn't go to mealtime. Very abusive. I was not paid. The first 4 months I was in Iraq, I was off the payroll, and this guy wouldn't let me go to the payroll department to fix it. So I had 3 children back in the States I was supposed to be providing for that I wasn't because I wasn't getting paid. And of course, nobody would believe that because who would think the Army doesn't pay soldiers, not just on active duty, but who are deployed in a combat zone? Guess what, folks? Happens all the time. All the stories we could tell you. And that will precede me into this next announcement. I wrote a book. It's called Off Switch. That is it's full-length novel. It is based upon that experience. It's fiction based on facts. 95% of what you will read in here, that's actually me on top of my gun truck in Mosul, Iraq. So 2008, 2009. It's true. It's like 95% truth, but written as fiction so that the guilty parties can't sue me, right? But it's in here. But I'm past that now, Sergeant C. I mean, I'm not saying sit by the phone. Due to my personal life, my family, my obligations, my business and stuff, I'm not going to call. We're not going to get together. I do appreciate the invite, and I wish you and your family the best. I no longer harbor a resentment because I was abused by a lieutenant in Iraq who kept telling me to thank you. You never met the guy. You don't know him. It wasn't your fault. I've let go of that resentment. I've forgiven you for something of which you had no reason to need my forgiveness anyway. You did nothing. You did your job. You did it well. You prepared me. I had a toxic, abusive leader. It wasn't your fault. But it was neat to hear from you. again, and I'm going to share your story with the audience tonight. But folks, you can get Off Switch in print or Kindle and Amazon.com. The links are in the description box below. And also, while we still have our Etsy store open, you can get personally autographed books from me, such as this one, what I think to be one of my best, Isle of Capri. Again, fiction. It's fact guised as fiction. 95% of the stories in this book are true as well. It's crazy. It's the paranormal stories that take place in the Philippines. So anyway, our Etsy store, we're going to shut it down. We don't have a date set. We're trying to get rid of a lot of the stock we have. And here's why. Etsy continually increases their fees to the sellers. That's us. And our profit margin, it's like $2 per book. The profit margins are so small. And this isn't even taken into account the time it takes us to pack them and send them out in the decorations I make, all that stuff. It's just not worth it. It is not worth it to us anymore. My CPA is very strict. And so when I come to him every year with our $10.99 from Etsy and it says you made X amount of money on Etsy, and it's like if I don't have receipts for like buying my books in bulk, he doesn't let me take, and he's a good CPA. You know what he's doing? He's making sure I don't get audited. And so I've learned to keep receipts. And he's also making sure that if I ever do get it audited, and he's sitting there with me in this audit representing me, he's got a law degree from Harvard, brilliant guy. He wants to make sure our ducks are in a row. So basically, the profit margins are too small now that Etsy has raised their fees so high. We could pass those fees on to the buyers by increasing the cost of our products, but there's only so much you can pay for a book. I mean, I think it's $12.95. Yeah, $12.99. I mean, there's only so much people are willing to pay for a book. So we're just going to discontinue that. So the Etsy store is called Homesteading Haven. I'm going to put that link in the description box as well. Remember a couple of years ago, I got on a woodworking kick. We got some of this stuff left. I think we got 3 of these kits. Fall is in the air. I'm getting ready to rush off to football practice again here for my son. I mean, the squirrels are chewing on the acorns, and every now and then when the breeze blows strong enough, poplar leaves are falling. It's coming. So that means Halloween's on the way. And check this out. I think this is one of the neatest things. In this little small flat rate box, you get a Halloween kit. Now, I made this. I made all these with bandsaws, paint, all kinds of stuff. Let me see what I'm trying to see here. This whole kit, I don't remember how much it costs, but I know I'm not going to raise the price on it. I'm not going to, because, you know, Etsy did. Here's what the main thing, yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this little box. This is all made out of wood. So you get a haunted house. I cut that out with a bandsaw and painted it. You get a tombstone. I made that, as if you can't tell, right? A candy corn. And then you get 4 little creatures. You get a jack-o'-lantern, a Frankenstein, a vampire, and a ghost. All that in this tiny little flat rate shipping box I made. So check out that Etsy store while it's still there. There's some neat stuff in there. I have a ton of Christmas decorations I made, and this stuff's just in storage in the shop, and we just want to liquidate as much of it as we can and then get rid of the Etsy thing because it's really just a tax liability now. So we're not making any profits, and then we're paying taxes on whatever. It's just not worth it. So with that said, I want to get to Sergeant C's story. Sergeant C really is a good guy. I really enjoyed, he says in his email that he always tells his wife, I was his favorite recruit. What's that say about those other guys and girls? No, it was good. He was a really good guy. I enjoyed that experience. I enjoyed, for the short while that I was with the Virginia Army National Guard, 29th Infantry Division, the ones who stormed the beaches at Normandy on D-Day. Wonderful. Then I went to Washington State, where things took a turn. But it had nothing to do with Sergeant C. All right, so let's get to the story. Here we go. Sergeant C writes, I was active duty in the Navy for 8 years back before I enlisted in the Army National Guard, which I have now retired from. But my last tour of duty with the Navy was at PMRF, Pacific Missile Range Facility, Barking Sands in Kauai, Hawaii, K-A-U-A-I. I don't know how to pronounce that. At that time, I was married to my ex, and we had our 2 sons. My oldest son, Dylan, now 23, was preschool age at the time, 4 years old. We lived in base housing and his preschool was within walking distance of our house. The aviation hangar that I worked in was about 3 miles from there. The only reason that I'm mentioning this is because I later found out that when the Navy built this hangar, they accidentally started to build it on an old Hawaiian burial ground. So they ended up moving the remains into a nice cemetery just beside the hangar and finished the building. The naval base was pretty small and there were only about 120 military personnel stationed there at that time. Anyway, after about 6 months of living in our house, my son started to wake up every night around the same time, claiming that there was an old man in his room that would stare at him and walk around his bed. He had also said that he had seen a man in our living room a few times and that he heard people talking, but he didn't know what they were saying. I honestly can't remember the many times that he would talk about this, but it was a lot. It was definitely a bit strange. Initially, I brushed it off and thought that maybe it was his overactive imagination or something. I figured that eventually it would stop, but after a couple of months of this happening, it started to really wear on my ex and me. We weren't getting much sleep with working long hours and now being woken up every night by our son. I was at my wit's end. My ex was working for MWR, Morale, Welfare, and Recreation, on base at the time, and ended up sharing the story with one of her coworkers, Sarah, who was from the island. I always thought that was like an oxymoron in the military, that they had a Morale, Welfare, and Recreation office, because when I was there, they wanted to make sure morale was low, our welfare was terrible, and we had no recreation. it's like what is it? HR, Human Resources. Everybody thinks that's where you go when you have a problem. No, it's not. Those people have the worst people skills, number one. And number two, they're there to protect the name of the organization. You go in there claiming you're being sexually harassed or abused in some other way, they're going to find a way to fire you. Now, they might get rid of whoever it is the accused is later if they find out they're doing it, but they're going to get rid of you first before you cause a stink. Then if you do go out and try to cause a stink to kind of put the name of the group in ill light, well, they're going to just come out and say, wow, what a disgruntled, we fired them. They're disgruntled. Of course they're claiming they were abused. They're pissed off because we fired them. Duh. And the sheep will believe it. On with the story. Okay. After hearing about what was happening, Sarah shared that my son had a gift. She said that she could see it in his eyes and that she also shared this gift. She said that she could see spirits and she knew what we were going through because she had similar things happen throughout her life. Sarah then told my ex that she had an elder uncle who was a Hawaiian priest. I can't remember if that was the exact term that she used for him or not, but she said that we could have him come to our home, and if there was any spirit or anything like that, he could help clear it from the house. My ex told me about this when I came home from work that same day. I was very skeptical and I asked how much money this man wanted. She said he didn't want any money or anything for his assistance. I think that out of desperation and a little bit of curiosity as well, I agreed to have this gentleman come to our house. A couple of days later, Sarah brought her uncle to the base, signed him in, and he followed us to our house. We shared with him what had been happening. He then proceeded to tell us about some of the history of that area. Not only had the base moved that burial ground, but it had also been built between the ocean and an area called Polihale. For ancient Hawaiians, Polihale was the site of an ancient temple from where Hawaiians believed the souls of the dead departed from the underworld. Also, at this point, the ocean currents there were very unpredictable and many people had been swept to their deaths throughout the years in that area. But anyway, this gentleman asked us where our son was. I told him that he was at preschool. Then he asked me if I could go get him and that he would like to meet him. It was very strange, but I went to get him while my ex stayed back and chatted with the man. When I arrived back home, I introduced him to my son. It was a very nice and friendly exchange. My son was not shy with the man at all. Then the gentleman asked, shall we go into the house, as we made our way to the front door. My ex walked in first, then the priest. My son was in front of me, standing just outside the front door, about to walk in the house, when all of a sudden my son stopped just before stepping inside. I almost tripped over him. I asked him what was going on while simultaneously nudging him to go into the house. My son then placed both of his hands on each side of the door, braced himself, and refused to step inside. His mom and the priest both looked back and saw this. The priest said that my son was just fine staying at the door and then asked if he could walk through the house. My ex followed behind the man as he began to make these odd hand gestures as he looked around and started to shout in what I assumed to be the Hawaiian language. I didn't understand any of it, but it looked to me as if he was having an argument with someone as he walked around from room to room. The man then made his way back into the living room, closed his eyes, and became quiet for about 30 seconds. He just stood there and watched in silence, or we just stood there and watched in silence. He then opened his eyes, looked around, and said that we wouldn't have any more issues. Then my son, very nonchalantly, proceeded to walk right into the house as if none of what just happened took place. The man told us that there were 6 spirits in our house. He said that he told them they had to leave and that they were now outside deciding where to go. It was so weird. We thanked him, wished him well, and he left. I was still a little skeptical about any of what the man had told us. However, my son never saw any man or anything in his room again and slept peacefully without waking up throughout the night from that point on. After that happened, I shared my experience with people at work to find out that there had been numerous people there that had stories of different paranormal accounts. That's my story. I look forward to hearing more stories from your channel. We should meet up sometime soon and catch up. Take care, brother. The end. Thank you, Sergeant C, for that story. And again, to make it clear, Sergeant C, I would love to see you, and at some point in the future, that might happen. It's just not going to be in the near future because, again, my son just started football practice. He's doing tackle this year at the middle school level, so it's like practice every day. I am helping with the team again this year. It's not quite concrete as to what degree, but so I'm tied up with that. He's homeschooling here during the day, and then I got all this stuff. Listen to me. Excuse. But it's nice knowing you're still out there and that your family's doing well. What do you think about that, folks? We've had several stories submitted from folks who have had experiences with spirits associated with burial grounds, and we believe some of the phenomena we've seen here on our property is associated with that. We've got 3 little girls that died during the Spanish flu buried in the woods right over here. This big oak tree back here, you remember? Where did it go? Well, there's a big oak tree. There it is. There. Yeah, it's back there somewhere. Potentially where old Jessup strung up old Jim Brown. That's from, I didn't bring a copy, but October Nights. Our omniscient, no, not the narrator. He's the reoccurring ghost who was kind of telling a lot of the stories. If you haven't read October Nights, you need to. Again, that's on Amazon in print or Kindle. And the Etsy store, if you want an autographed copy, let me remember to put that link in the description box of this video. Because again, the Etsy store, it's shutting down. So get what you can there while you can. So if you have a story of an experience or of an experience from someone you know associated with anything paranormal, supernatural, cryptid, UFO, alien abductions, got a good story in volume 5 about that, submit them to us here. The email is crazylake@mail.com. Give us your permission and we'll read them on the channel like we just did Sergeant C's story, and we'll put them in the next volume. I mean, volume 6 will be next. Now, it took us a year to get from volume 4 to volume 5, but you know, we had a lot going on. I was out of the country for 6 months, spending the winter in the Philippines. I was totally on vacation there, doing very little work. And we're getting established over on Instagram now, blowing things up like crazy on Instagram at Sick Twisted Humor, dominating Facebook at Sick Twisted Humor. But I get the emails and I read the comments. I know a lot of you appreciate this YouTube channel and you let me know you're grateful and thankful that I do something here a couple times a week and maintain it. I fully intend to do that as long as I'm here because it's fun. Appreciate you all and send me your stories. Let's start on volume 6. See you for more next time from right here at the most awesomest homesteading channel on the entire planet that has nothing to do with homesteading. Homesteading off the grid.